So it's been a week and a half since I've been back from Jamaica. But one thing I realized was that my mother always taught me, when I was younger, always greet people with kindness, you know. Just a simple hello, good morning, good morning. You see what I mean? It's just little things like that can make somebody's day. Somebody could be having a crappy day, and just you saying, hi, good morning, hope you have a good day, little things like that. I feel like we need more of that in the world, When I was in Jamaica, everybody was just so nice. Everybody, good morning, how are you, And I love that. And it's like you get that in a lot of other places. You don't get that in New York. When I went to Texas, it was like that. Jamaica, not Jamaica, DR, Dominicans and their attitudes, but, everybody else is really freaking nice. Yeah, so, sorry, I had to get into my office, but basically, I don't know if, I want to live the rest of my life in New York. People are just so rude. They're so mean, I don't like that, like my mom was always so sweet, even like as long as I can remember, it's always hi, hello, whatever, to complete strangers, by the way, and as time went on, it's like, people don't do that anymore. Like people don't even clap when you make it to your destination on planes anymore. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, that's something you should be grateful for, because anything can happen in the sky. You know what I'm saying? Like, God, Mother Nature works in mysterious ways, so you just don't know what could happen. So the fact that you've went from being up in the air to touching ground again is something people take for granted. You know what I mean? And the last few years that I've flown, I noticed that, people don't really clap as much. Like one or, a few people will start it, but not everybody, the whole plane doesn't do it anymore. And it's funny because when I left Jamaica, I had a connecting flight to Atlanta, right? And, nobody really clapped at first, and then the pilot was like, this pilot's, his co-pilot, it was his first landing, so he was like, show him some respect, because nobody would have thought, like he made a very smooth landing, and nobody would have expected that to be his first one, you know what I mean? So it's just, people take everything for granted nowadays, and it's just so crazy that this is literally the way people are now. We've been conditioned to think this way and to behave this way, and it really sucks. It really sucks. I've always been taught to just be nice to people, because you never know what they're going through, you know what I mean? This job has taught me to be softer, a little bit in certain areas, you know what I'm saying? And hard in others. But just, even life, I was legit by myself in Jamaica, and I'd come across people, and the main thing you're not supposed to do, I was doing, like, people, you're not supposed to tell people you're by yourself on vacation, especially as a young woman. And I realized, like, during my trip, I'm like, damn, girl, you just keep doing it to yourself, But I'm grateful that, I had met these amazing souls that, they were looking out for me. We looked out for each other, you know what I'm saying? You don't come across people like that anymore. Like, it could be your own friends that will leave you fucked up, stranded, you know what I'm saying? Like, stuck somewhere, I literally met these people that day, we partied a little too hard, and the girls made sure I made it back to my room safely, you know what I'm saying? So it's just a lot to think about, and, constantly going on these trips, it just makes me realize, like, I love New York, but I don't think I can stay in New York, you know? And some people are like that, some people aren't, you know? But that experience alone just made me realize, like, wow, you know, people just aren't nice. You know, people are just so freaking rude, you know? Like, and it's funny because I think when I came back from Jamaica, I got on the bus to go to work, and the bus was really crowded, right? So I make my way towards the back, and I realize that there's a woman sitting by herself, you know? So she's sitting against the window. So I'm sliding in the seat. I'm like, can I sit with you? And she was, a little older, and she's like, you know. But when it was her, she got off before I did, you know, but when it was her time to get off, she's like, excuse me, sweetheart. So I got up. She's like, thank you. Have a great day, you know. And that made my morning because, you know, I tell that to people and then they say it back to me, but people don't initiate it, you know? And I think we need more of that here, you know what I'm saying? Like, we don't get greeted in the street anymore, you know, like walking by a random person, good morning, you know, like you guys saw in the other video, like, that just doesn't happen as much anymore, you know? And I was just making a video and he heard me say good morning and he turned around, he's walking his dog. It's an old man walking his dog and he's like, oh, good morning, you know? So I just say this to say, be kinder to people, you know? Just a simple good morning can make somebody's day, you know? People could be dying, you know, and you just wouldn't know because they don't look like it, but they could be. You know, it could be a mental thing, it could be emotional, you know. People do die of a broken heart, you know. So yeah, I mean, I'm gonna keep traveling, but I know for a fact I don't want to raise my son in New York. You know, I want him to grow up knowing that there are kind people in the world. Granted, there is ugly in the world, you know, there is a balance, there is ugly, there is mean and cruel, but I do hope that there are more good than bad, you know, because we do tend to see a lot of bad on the news. You know, the news is like so toxic nowadays. I don't even watch it. I feel like it's bad for your mental health. It's good to like be up to date once in a while, but there's so much negativity going on, and I understand we're in a current situation where World War III might be occurring, you know, and it's a very scary thing. Power in numbers, right? You know, a lot of people are afraid to say things, you know, because they feel like they might be the only person to feel this way. But in all reality, there could be 100 people, even if it's 5, 20 people, you know what I'm saying? Like, especially now with social media, like, everybody has access to it. Everybody all over the world has access to social media, you know? So it's like, you might not think you're making a difference, but you are, you know? So just be kind. That's all I ask. Happy Thursday. Have a great day.